Saturday was supposed to be chill, like cartoons till noon and sneakers on the sidewalk kind of chill. But when 11-year-old Isaiah set up his lemonade stand on that sleepy Georgia street corner, the sun wasn't the only thing heating up. Kid was a whole mood. Little plastic table, hand-painted sign, and a jug full of dreams. He wanted to raise money for a school trip, nothing wild, just a kid grinding. But across the street, Meredith Talcott, aka Suburbia's unofficial Karen-in-Chief, watched like he was selling stolen goods. One look and she was already dialing 911, using that voice that made everything sound like a crisis. "Suspicious activity," she whispered, like this boy was out here causing chaos with cups of citrus. Isaiah didn't flinch, didn't pack up, didn't even know the storm was brewing. His aunt watched from the porch, iced tea in hand, brows already raised. But she wasn't the one Meredith should have worried about. Isaiah's mom pulled up 5 minutes later, heels clicking, braid tight, eyes sharper than any cop's badge. Her name was Judge Anaya Rhodes, federal. And Meredith? She had no clue she'd just summoned the last person on earth she wanted to talk to without a HOA lawyer present. 2 patrol cars rolled in, like they were responding to a hostage situation. Cops hopped out, quick with the attitude. One of them, Officer Lane, didn't even look at Isaiah when he said, "We got a call about you harassing neighbors." The lemonade in Isaiah's hand started shaking. "A kid," Anaya said, stepping between her son and the officers. She didn't shout, didn't need to. Her tone cut like glass. "You rolled up on a child selling lemonade?" Officer Lane gave her a look, the one that says, "Who asked you?" and "Back up," all in one breath. "Bad move." "Ma'am, you need to stand back." That's when Anaya pulled out her ID. Badge flipped, title, front and center. "I'll stand wherever the hell I want," she said. "And you're about 10 seconds from a federal misconduct complaint." The air shifted. Even the breeze backed up. Lane blinked, then tried to recover, stuttering something about a misunderstanding. Anaya wasn't having it. "You didn't see a threat. You saw a black boy standing where you didn't think he belonged." Meredith had vanished by then, curtains drawn, phone off. But it was too late. Neighbors were watching. A couple had started recording. One even shouted, "Let him sell the damn lemonade!" Officer Lane tried to walk it back fast, but Anaya was already calling the precinct captain. Not yelling, just methodical, surgical. Lane's partner looked like he wanted to disappear into the shrubs. And Isaiah? He stood taller than he had all morning, because his mom wasn't just defending him, she was making a point. By Monday, the footage hit local news. Federal judge confronts officers over racially charged stop. Comment sections exploded. Some cheered. Others foamed at the mouth. The precinct issued a vague statement about reviewing protocol. But behind the scenes, phones were ringing off the hook. IA opened a quiet file. Officers started whispering. Meredith's name got mentioned more times than HOA rules on trash bin placement. And Isaiah? He raised enough money for that trip and then some. But more than that, he learned something powerful. The sidewalk he stood on was never neutral ground. It was a battleground disguised as concrete. And his mother? She didn't just show up. She shut it down, with words, with truth, with a look that said, "Try me again." Because sometimes justice doesn't show up in a courtroom. Sometimes it pulls up in an SUV, steps out in heels and reminds everybody exactly who the hell she is. There's something about the way sirens sound in a quiet suburb. They don't just announce danger, they import it. The cops showed up fast, like Meredith had pressed the panic button on her white privilege remote. 2 officers, both tall, both white, both clearly hopped up on way too much authority, stepped out like they were hunting suspects, not sipping lemonade. Their boots hit the asphalt like punctuation. No greeting, no chill. Just full-on interrogator mode. "Name," Officer Grant barked, already sizing Isaiah up like he was a suspect on Cops, instead of a 6th grader with a Sharpie-colored sign. Isaiah blinked. Isaiah? He offered, voice tiny, confused. His hand still holding a plastic cup like it might protect him. The sign next to him read, Lemonade 50C. Fundraiser for DC trip. Bright and innocent. But Grant didn't even glance at it. This your stuff? The second cop, Officer Melton, grunted, already reaching for Isaiah's backpack. You got anything in here we need to worry about?
No. Hey, wait, that's mine.
Isaiah's voice cracked. You can't. My mom said. But they were already unzipping the bag like it was full of C4. Crayons, a crumpled math worksheet, and a half-eaten PB&J spilled out onto the sidewalk like evidence. Grant gave a low whistle. Looks like someone's trying to be slick, he said. Cover story and all. Isaiah didn't understand. He just stood there, frozen in the kind of fear you're not supposed to feel until you're old enough to vote. Meredith watched it unfold from her porch, arms folded tight like she was proud of the chaos she'd conjured. Her lips curled just slightly. Like this is exactly how she thought things should go. But she wasn't alone anymore. Curtains were shifting. Neighbors were stepping outside, phones in hand, whispers rippling through the street like an incoming tide. The energy had changed. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't about a lemonade stand. It was about who was allowed to exist without being seen as a threat. And then, like a scene from a different movie entirely, that black SUV glided up to the curb, sleek, silent, deadly calm. It didn't just stop, it arrived. The door opened, and out stepped Judge Nadira Cole. 6 feet of composed fury, dressed in all black like the funeral she was about to throw for someone's career. Her heels clicked like gavel strikes as she crossed the street, not rushing, not shouting, just moving with intent. The officers didn't notice her at first. They were too busy violating every code in the book. But the neighbors noticed. Meredith definitely noticed. Her arms loosened just a little. Nadira walked straight through the tension, slicing it clean, and knelt beside her son without even looking at the men who were still rifling through his things. "Did they touch you?" she asked softly, one hand on Isaiah's trembling shoulder. He shook his head fast. "No, but..." His voice broke. "They grabbed my bag." That's when she looked up. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Nadira's gaze landed on Officer Grant like a spotlight with a body count. The kind of look that made grown men reevaluate their pensions. She stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust from her knees, and then said in a voice just barely louder than a whisper, "Step away from my child. Now." Melton blinked. Grant's face twitched. "Ma'am, we received a call." "I don't care what you received," Nadira said, voice velvet and razor blades. "I'm Judge Nadira Cole, Federal, District 7. That's my son. And you are one bad decision away from being the headline story on every news outlet from here to DC." You could hear the air shift. A neighbor gasped. Phones tilted up. Officer Grant took a literal step back. Melton looked like he wanted to fade into the bushes. Meredith finally stepped back inside and shut her damn door. Isaiah stood taller now. His mom was here. And she wasn't just protecting him. She was reclaiming the space. Reclaiming the narrative. Nadira didn't raise her voice once, but it was clear as hell. The storm hadn't started yet. But it was coming. And this time, it wasn't going to stop with a slap on the wrist. It was about to flip the whole damn table. At first, the cops didn't flinch. 2 uniforms, 2 egos, too much attitude. Officer Grant squinted at Nadira like she was just another civilian getting in the way. Melton's hand hovered near his belt, ready to flex without cause. They didn't see the judge. They just saw a black woman in leggings and sneakers, no title stitched on her hoodie, no courtroom behind her to validate the power humming under her skin. "Ma'am, I said stand back," Grant snapped, the kind of tone people usually reserve for wild dogs and Twitter trolls. Nadira didn't move an inch, didn't blink. Her arms crossed with precision, like she was calculating something. She looked at both men as if she were filing them away for later. Because she was. She straightened, shoulders back, chin lifted just enough to signal the storm brewing behind her calm. "My name," she said, slow and deliberate, "is Judge Nadira Cole. United States District Court, and you're about to make a very big mistake. Boom! That was the moment the air changed. You could feel it. Like the first crack of thunder before a downpour. Melton's brows pulled together. Grant looked like someone had just dumped ice water down his collar. One of them actually stepped back. Not a lot, but enough. Enough for everyone watching to know they'd just realized they were standing on a landmine in flip-flops. Across the street, Meredith's face did a full 180. Color, gone. Smirk, evaporated. Her phone slipped a little in her grip as she backed toward her door, like she was trying to unsend the 911 call that started all this. But the block was already watching. Phones were raised. A neighbor, Mr. Delaney, 2 doors down, was already live streaming. "We are live on Oakcrest Avenue," he whispered to his phone. "And y'all are not gonna believe who just ethered the police." Nadira didn't break eye contact. "Badge numbers," she said sharply. "Now!" Grant hesitated, eyes darting toward Melton, like he needed a teammate to jump in and save him. None came. "Ma'am, Judge," he corrected quickly. "There's been a misunderstanding." Nadira stepped forward. "The only thing misunderstood here," she said, voice like chilled titanium, "was your authority." She pointed at Isaiah's open backpack, still on the sidewalk. "You searched a minor's belongings without consent. You approached a child without guardian presence. You ignored his protest. You dismissed his civil rights because your biases couldn't handle the image of a young black boy on a corner without assuming criminality." Grant opened his mouth like he might argue, but Nadira was already rolling. 42 U.S. Code, CRR 1983, she recited. "Civil action for deprivation of rights. I suggest you look it up on your next unpaid leave." Melton muttered something about protocol. Nadira wasn't done. "You didn't ask for ID. You didn't establish probable cause. You acted on a neighbor's gut feeling instead of the law. And now, you're standing here hoping my title gives you an escape. It doesn't. It gives me jurisdiction." Boom, boom, boom. By now, 3 more neighbors had joined Mr. Delaney's live stream. One woman gasped audibly when Nadira dropped her court title again like a hammer. "You assumed I was just another black woman you could bark orders at," she continued. "But let me be very clear. You will remember my name." Grant, suddenly sweating despite the breeze, fumbled for his notebook. "I will log this for review. There's no need to escalate." "You already did that," Nadira said, not even looking at him now. Her attention turned to Isaiah, still clutching his cup. She walked back to her son and knelt beside him again, brushing a curl off his forehead. "You okay?" Isaiah nodded. "They scared me." She nodded once, lips tight. Then, with her back still to the officers, she spoke again, clear, lethal, unshaken. "Go back to your cruiser." Neither officer said the word. They just moved. Awkward, disjointed. Like people walking off a stage they weren't ready to be yanked from. The car door slammed. Tires squealed a little too hard. And just like that, they were gone. But the silence that followed, loud. People applauded, not loud. Just enough. Just real. Meredith's door slammed behind her like an exclamation point. The block wasn't whispering anymore. They were watching, recording, remembering. Nadira stood, took her son's hand, and faced the cameras. "My name is Judge Nadira Cole," she said, eyes burning. "And this is what accountability looks like in its early stages." She didn't say the fight's coming. She was the fight. By sunset, the whole damn block had changed. Oakcrest Avenue used to be a quiet street full of dog walkers, recycling bins, and polite fake smiles. But now it was CNN breaking news with a Chiron-type energy. News vans double-parked like they owned the place. Reporters pacing sidewalks in heels and sneakers, looking for someone, anyone, who'd seen the slapdown heard round the internet. The video of Judge Nadira Cole shutting down 2 cops like a courtroom goddess from Olympus had gone full viral. We're talking 3.7 million views in 4 hours. And counting. Nadira didn't flinch. She could have hid. Could have pulled the no-comment card and ducked behind tinted windows. But nah, that's not how she was built. She stepped outside her house just after 8 p.m., calm as sunrise. dressed in a crisp white blazer, like she knew exactly what the headlines needed. No notes, no podium. Just her and a storm in her chest. Reporters swarmed, mics raised, cameras clicking like machine gun fire. But when she spoke, the street fell silent. "Today," she said, voice sharp and steady, "my son was treated like a threat because of his skin, not his actions." A pause. Not dramatic, just necessary. This is the reality Black children face daily. A lemonade stand is called suspicious. A backpack becomes a reason to search. Their childhood is stripped in real time while people like Ms. Talcott watch from porches and weaponize fear. This, she motioned to the cameras, isn't about lemonade. It's about legacy. It's about how quick the system is to criminalize our boys before they even grow into men. The crowd was dead still. Even the reporters looked a little shook. Because she wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying. She was controlled fury wrapped in elegance, and every word hit like a gavel to the chest. Calling the police should never be a substitute for prejudice. Yet in communities like this, it too often becomes exactly that, a button you push when blackness makes you uncomfortable. Cut to Meredith Talcott, whose name was already trending with the hashtags #KarenOfTheYear and #LemonadeGate. The internet did what it does best, investigated. Her Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, everything got put under the microscope. By dinner time, someone had posted screenshots of old HOA complaints she'd filed. Then came the Yelp reviews. Then her employer, some upscale real estate firm, issued a statement. "We do not condone the actions displayed in the viral footage. Talcott has been placed on leave pending review." It was public shaming on steroids. But Nadira? She didn't even blink at that part. This wasn't about Meredith. Not really. She wasn't there for blood. She was there for change. "Let me be clear," she said, gaze cutting through every lens like X-rays. "This isn't about online justice. I don't want apologies. I want policies. I want reform. I want clear, enforceable protocols for how police interact with minors. I want every precinct to undergo civil rights retraining. And I want it on the record that silence in the face of racial profiling is complicity." She stepped forward once. "I will be pursuing this legally, federally, if needed. I've already contacted the Department of Justice, and I will not be standing down." Someone in the crowd tried to ask about Isaiah. "How's your son handling all this?" Nadira finally softened. "Just for a second. He asked me," she said quietly, "Am I safe if they come back tomorrow?" And I told him, "You're safe because I will fight until this country remembers who it promised to protect." Mic drop. People didn't clap. Not yet. It wasn't a rally. It was a reckoning. But the energy? It was electric. The kind that seeps into your skin and makes you stand up straighter. By 10 p.m., her statement was airing on every major network. Analysts were already talking civil rights violations. Police union reps were scrambling. And someone at the DOJ had definitely started a new email chain titled Urgent Cole Incident. Because when Judge Nadira Cole stepped into that spotlight, she didn't just demand justice. She redefined it. By sunrise, Judge Nadira Cole had already drafted the first wave of paperwork. And no, it wasn't just some angry email with a subject line in all caps. This was official, federal, fireproof. She filed a civil rights complaint through the U.S. District Court with the kind of legal precision that made other judges lean back and say, "Oh, this ain't just smoke, this is scorched earth." But Nadira didn't stop with the two officers. She named the whole damn department, because no one just wakes up one morning and decides to racially profile a sixth grader selling lemonade. That kind of bias, that's grown, taught, baked into policy like poison in a pie. She accused the precinct of institutional failure, of chronic neglect towards civil rights protocols, and of cultivating a culture where community protection was selective and steeped in racial bias. Basically, she flipped the table, took names, and dropped receipts. Within a week, her legal team, a small army of sharp-as-nails attorneys, policy analysts, and a couple pissed-off law school interns, was swimming in data. Calls to 911 from Oakcrest and surrounding neighborhoods. Almost 80% of them involved suspicious activity, where the suspect was black or brown. Want to guess how many of those calls ended with actual charges? Less than 5%. And over a dozen of those calls, you guessed it, same name, same street, same porch. Meredith Talcott's number was all over those logs. And when local media caught wind of that little stat, it was game over for the polite HOA narrative. Suddenly, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, and Nadira? She was done letting patterns slide. While her case crawled through the legal gears, Nadira launched something louder and faster. A community campaign called Know Your Rights, Protect Your Kids. Pop-up workshops in barbershops, churches, school gyms. Free legal clinics with actual attorneys, breaking down Miranda rights to middle schoolers. Parents were showing up 2 hours early just to sit in the front row. Students were posting flyers on lockers. Even the teachers got involved. This wasn't some awareness month. This was war prep, because Nadira had seen it firsthand. How the justice system liked to eat kids alive before they even got a chance to grow. And she wasn't just fighting for Isaiah anymore. She was fighting for every boy whose smile could be mistaken for a threat. Every girl who learned too young to keep her hands visible, her voice soft, her dreams small. Then the precinct blinked. Late one night, her attorney got the call. The department is prepared to offer a settlement, confidential, significant compensation, an apology letter. Nadira didn't even need to think about it. She shut that down with 5 words that dropped like a gavel to the gut. You don't get to buy silence. Not this time. You don't get to slide a check across the table like it erases the fear in my son's eyes. Like it unwrites decades of harassment, suspicion, and shame. She said in a statement the next morning, "This system was built on intimidation, and I will not be another brick in it." The news ate it up, not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. And when truth walks into the room wearing a badge of her own, the liars start scrambling. Local government tried to calm things down. City Council hosted a listening session, which turned into a roasting session in record time. Nadira showed up, front row, notepad open, pen ready. When the police chief stammered through a statement about community trust, she raised one eyebrow so high it probably registered on seismographs. This wasn't just public opinion anymore. This was public evidence. And Nadira Cole? She had made herself unignorable. A judge without the robe, a mother without fear. A woman building an army out of every neighbor, teacher, and teenager, tired of being treated like a threat in their own zip code. The court date loomed, but Nadira wasn't waiting for a verdict. She was setting a precedent. In the courtroom, in the streets, in every space where silence used to reign. Because when the system tries to hand you hush money, you tear it up and turn the mic back on. And Nadira, she wasn't just speaking. She was rewriting the rules. It didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a damn arena. Packed rows, cameras rolling, phones lifted high like protest signs. And right in the center of it all stood Judge Nadira Cole. Except today, she wasn't wearing black robes or carrying legal briefs. Today, she stood in front of that jury as a mother. No titles, no bench. Just truth in her throat and fire in her chest. Across the aisle, the 2 officers sat stiff in their uniforms, cleaned up for optics, but everyone knew what was underneath. Their names had become hashtags, their faces forever attached to a video that had refused to die online. They'd been suspended, investigated, dragged through the mud, and still tried to act like they were the victims. But the real weight of the day wasn't about them. It was Isaiah. He sat beside his mom, a little taller now, shoulders squared, chin up. There was still a trace of that scared kid who just wanted to sell lemonade and go on a field trip. But there was something else too, steel. He'd seen how fast your world could change, just for being in the wrong skin at the wrong corner. And today, he wasn't shrinking. He was watching, learning, holding space for every other kid who didn't get a courtroom moment like this. Nadira raised her hand, swore in, and the courtroom quieted like the city itself was holding its breath. "When I heard those officers speak to my son," she began, "I didn't just hear aggression, I heard assumption. The assumption that my black son couldn't possibly be innocent. That his lemonade stand was a scam. That his presence was a threat. They didn't ask questions. They made decisions. They made judgments. She paused. The irony wasn't lost on me. The jury leaned in. She went on. I've worn the robe, I've read the Constitution into the record more times than I can count. But no amount of degrees or titles protects a black child from someone else's fear. We talk about law and order, but without accountability, law becomes a weapon, and order becomes a muzzle. Even the stenographer looked like she was trying not to cry. After Nadira stepped down, Isaiah was asked if he wanted to speak. He looked at his mom, then the judge, then stood slowly. I just wanted to raise money for a school trip, he said, voice quiet but clear. I didn't know I needed protection to sell lemonade. That one sentence? It hit harder than any legal argument in the room. The officers were handed disciplinary action, stripped of their badges, their pensions under review, and their names locked in court records that wouldn't fade like news cycles do. Meredith? She resigned from the HOA, deleted every trace of herself online, and dipped out of Oakcrest faster than a rumor with receipts. She became a ghost, but Nadira didn't chase her. That wasn't the mission. The win came weeks later, in a city hall chamber packed wall to wall. The mayor, once cautious and tongue-tied, now stood reading off the final draft of Ordinance 411, named for the day it all went down. Mandatory de-escalation training for all officers, quarterly civil rights refresher courses, anonymous non-emergency calls now required to be verified before dispatch, racial bias, reports to be released quarterly to the public, community liaison boards to be funded, not just announced. It was a blueprint, not perfect but permanent. The room erupted. Cheers, applause, tears. Nadira didn't speak that night. She didn't need to. Her name was already engraved in the footnotes of that law. She just nodded once, hand clutching Isaiah's as flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Later, at home, with the city finally quiet for the first time in months, she kicked off her heels and let the silence settle around them like a warm blanket. Isaiah stood in the kitchen, pouring lemonade into two mismatched mugs. She took hers, sat on the couch, and pulled him in close, one arm around his shoulders, the other holding her cup. You know, she whispered, you're never too small to stand up. Isaiah leaned into her side, smiling for real this time. Sometimes, she added, voice low and laced with pride, it takes a child to remind grown folks how justice is supposed to taste.